Let's call a meeting to order for Board of Adjustment for to do our business. We just go right into the first one, I guess. Aaron, you want to read the information on that?
Yep. And just so everyone knows, normally Holly is with us taking minutes. So I'll be taking some minutes tonight too as I'm interacting with you all. So I'll be a little slower perhaps than as slow as I already normally am. So please bear with me.
All right.
Aaron, should we approve minutes from the previous meeting?
That's usually the last thing we do.
It is? Okay. Never mind.
Okay, so the first matter for the board tonight is the continuation of the Caston application. Please take notice that an application was received from the following person for a variance of setback requirements. The application is from Derek and Rachel Caston of La Crescent Township. This is a continuation of a hearing to be held at 6 p.m. on Thursday, September 24th. Due to the health pandemic, the hearing will be conducted remotely pursuant to Minnesota statutes. With board members participating by telephone, anyone wishing to monitor the meeting by telephone must contact the zoning office, must have contacted the zoning office by September 22nd. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of the application. Comments were to be mailed to the county or emailed to the county and received by September 15th. Comments in regard to the petition received by that date will be part of the record and will be made available for review by board members prior to the meeting. This was advertised on September 9th. So we've already heard some from the applicants and public on this request, and I believe most board members were able to view the site since the prior hearing. Additionally, we've received some new materials from the applicants, and we have also received a comment that came in after your packets were mailed, but we have received a comment at this point. But perhaps we would begin by asking the applicants to cover any of the new information that they provided. Tim, can you walk us, or whoever, I guess, from the casting team wants to walk us through some of that new material?
Yeah, this is Tim Clancy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. At the request of Aaron Locker, we did some more work, and after meeting at the site and having the opportunity, which we enjoyed meeting with the board members, among the things that we did was that in trying to create a workable solution, if you take a look at the redesign that we did of the layout, we did make changes to the array. We split it in half. We're able to take half of it and move it all the way off, the setback. On the other one, it was, not quite as easily to do, but what we're trying to do is to minimize encroachment into the setback line. That was one thing that we did. Another thing is that we did take geometric measurements to confirm or deny or confirm would there be shading on the driveway there. We're able to confirm there is no shading on the driveway based on the proposed location of the array in either one, as well as the known height of the array, and we provided that information. So, and then there was a kind of a review of what were the opportunities or challenges in other areas of the Caston property, and on on the east side along there are already elements there of retention ponds, and then you go along and there's a septic field. And this is something that I had written. There were some issues that were raised on the west side, which, you know, we took a look at and tried to give our best view of. And so what we felt was the best solution was to make changes in the design to, for lack of a better word, respect, the setback location and try and minimize it, and basically just kind of take it as a calculation of keeping the setback intact, and basically measure that against, the 30-year benefit of the array that we're looking to put in, which again we have provided that, it's the equivalent of over 500 tons of coal. It's the equivalent of 22 or 23,000 trees, and almost 2 million pounds of reduction in CO2 emissions. So one thing I would bring up is to try and reach what is our compromise point between maintaining integrity to the letter of the setback relative to the benefit that we propose to install.
Tim, can I ask you to go over, you submitted, or we received some additional documents from you that are in the board packets that went out for this continuance hearing. I believe those start on pages 7 and 8 have to do with the site visits. Looks like page 10, there's some new exhibits that you provided, 10 and onward. You want to...
Okay, one of the things there is that while I sent some documents out to you, trying to remember either late last week or early this week, I didn't receive anything from you.
Oh, you didn't get a new board packet. Okay, well, I guess I'm looking at the, this one is showing the, I guess it doesn't have a title. It's showing the utilities, I believe, the buried utilities on the site.
Okay.
And it's also showing the slopes. It's got the red and yellow and green.
Yes. Okay, so okay, I have these open, yes, and so and the contour, the one with the green, are among other things contours, and then so again, we actually have two sets here, and one is the what was proposed in August, and then the one which is dated, the revised plan, which is 9/16. That, and what we did is we actually presented three maps for you. One which showed our proposed with the proposed split array and the power to the property and the fiber optic and all that, and then we had one with contours, and then one with gradients. So
do you want to speak at all about the existing utilities on site, and
yeah,
how that affected where you're looking to site this?
Yeah. Now the thing is that what our concern is there, and that's primarily has to do with any discussion with putting it over on the west side, and that is first off is the impact of the 500 feet of trenching and a great deal more in the way of aluminum cable and everything that it takes to facilitate all that. In addition to which, we are going to be, having to go across, the utility lines and all that, and it isn't that it can't be done no matter what, but again, it's a thing of the what is involved in doing that and the complexity. And yeah, as builders, we are looking at kind of call it a cost benefit.
Tim, I'm looking at the packet that we sent out, and it looks like we failed to put in your option B diagram. Is there a way you could describe to folks what that?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, that makes a tremendous amount of difference.
Yeah, I want to make sure that they understand what you're proposing there.
Oh, okay. Starting with what we began with, you can see where it is one contiguous row that's like 175 or 190 feet long, and it goes along, you know, the bottom of the natural hill contour. What we did to modify that, because, you know, I want to stress we are working to make this work for everybody, is that we took the array and we split it in half. And on the east side, we moved it away from the setback, and we thought about rotating it some versus keeping it straight. We may do some fine tuning there, but the main thing is that we're able to do this while maintaining our energy production needs. And so we were able to take quite a bit of the array out of the setback and not really even ask for it. Also, one thing is that we had nominally, we're talking about a 30-foot setback. What we found when we went back and fine-tuned our numbers, we're not really asking for 20 feet of setback. We're asking for 15 feet of setback to accommodate the position of the west side of the modified design.
If I just to ask a question, do you mean that you're getting that 35 feet from the property line then?
Yes, as opposed to
So
30.
you only need 15-foot variance. Instead of the 30 feet, you're 35.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the thing is, if we start looking at going beyond that, then we start going, you know, and I did have the opportunity to meet with some of you on Wednesday the 16th, and we were talking about a combination of jurisdictional requirements, and of course I'm more concerned about equipment and efficiency requirements. We're able to bring that in. If we go any farther on the west side of the proposed array, we will start beginning to see some, you know, reduction in productivity of the array. And so it gets back to what we're asking is kind of the trade-off. You know, if we could get 15 feet, and in return, you know, we can provide, you know, environmental benefit.
Tom or Tim, can you? I know we talked about it a bit when at least the site visit that I was part of, but when you're measuring your setback, when we were on site, you asked about if it's from the post or from the panels, and I guess I indicated that you could approach it either way as long as you make clear to the board which it would be. So when you're saying 15 feet, are you measuring to the post or are you measuring to the backside of the panels?
Well, the total amount of distance that we're talking about there is going to be, you say, between 3 and 4 feet. The panels are nominally, I think, a little over 8 feet long, and you know, they're at a 30-degree angle, and I'm not very good at doing trig in my head, but we're talking about probably, I'd say 3 or 4 feet if we were in terms of the difference from the center line of the post to the edge of the panel. Okay, and I don't think I'm too far off of that.
So the
Tim, if I interject really quick, this is Aaron Benson with Solar Connection. The 15 feet would be to the post. The 20 feet would be to the back of the array. So that when Tim suggested that we could get by with a mere 15 feet, That's based off of the fact that that would be where the post would lie. The array would cantilever back another 5 feet beyond that. So, so I guess it's based on interpretation, but the initial drawing showing the 20-foot variance would be to the back of the panel. So 15 feet would be to the post.
Thanks. So if I could just make a statement, I guess, about Plan B, it wouldn't actually change the variance that you're seeking. It would just change the amount of structure, that your amount of panels that would be set within that variance request. Am I stating
what we're looking to do is that we're trying to work with the situation and get as much of our system off of the variance, if that makes sense. And there is part of it where we're kind of just out of pretty early out of hand, able to gain benefit. The rest of it, I realize that the policies regarding setbacks is that it's kind of bimodal. It's you are or you are not. And I suppose by that line of thinking, some of the array is, maybe, over the line, but we have worked to try and create a benefit, try and minimize, the impact.
You say that would reduce the amount of the panels that would be in the setback area. Can you give us either a percentage or a number of feet? Just it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. What it boils down to, okay, is that we are splitting the array in half. It was, I think, nominally, I'm going to say 175. Let's call it 180 feet because that's easy to cut in half. So we'd have a pair of 90s. 90 of the 180 feet is well back. Okay. So that's clear. We are leaving behind, about half. And we are leaving behind half of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim or anybody else on the Caston team, is there anything else you want to just bring up for the board to consider?
Oh no, nothing that really hasn't been said. Again, our position has always been to try and put in these environmentally progressive systems with a minimum of environmental impact. I think that our theme is pretty consistent there. I've dealt with other setback discussions, in other projects, and so I'm not insensitive that, you don't want to have the slippery slope of doing away with them. It was put there for a place, and like I said, we're trying to compromise. We're trying to respect the county plan and respect the original requirement while providing what we think is a long-term, I'll say, benefit to the community.
Would any of you want to touch on, why alternative locations weren't selected? I know that, that was talked about during the site visits, but in order.
Yeah, and I had sent that in. Going along the east side and then traveling north, you have a couple of retention ponds, and then the runoff areas that drain into them. As you go farther north, then you have the septic system, which is not a suitable place. And then along the north, there is just really not, there's really no room before you get into a property line with another neighbor, okay? And then when you go around to the west side, you start running into issues having to do with a very long trench distance, having to cut and rejoin, that is, do all the work for the existing power and fiber optic. And then there are issues having to do with that you put it over in the west field there, you still have a view shed issue, which is in the very beginning of the discussion with the neighbor who had raised concerns. You're still going to have a view shed issue, but then that brings about view shed issues with the neighbor on the other side to the west. And so the problem is that we've created a view shed issue with one owner and turned it into a view shed issue with two owners, and which was, I felt, not in a productive direction. And then the other thing is that field is quite open, and while there's some trees that will they're far enough back that they do not cause a shading problem. The thing is, there's really nothing to avoid pile up of snow during the winter. And the thing is that it's the nature of how panels work, that if the bottom row of panels on these gets covered up, it will basically shut off the panel. The panel becomes like an internal diode, and closing off the bottom 10% of the panel will turn off 100% of it. And so, and winter is a time when you want to be able to get all the energy you can. So we are facing some very potential productivity and function issues over there in the west. And again, in the thing that I had mailed into Houston County, we had talked about that, or I had addressed that.
I have a question. This is Franklin. The double array, there's been concern about water not going into the ground. Are you putting that array in with posts, like a single line row of panels?
Yes, the attachment base is still driven post. That hasn't changed.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Are there any additional things you want to say or questions from the board at this point? And if not, there is a comment that I guess I would read if the board would like me to, that came in on the 20th.
Yep, I think we're to the public testimony, and that's pretty much what we have, I think. Let's go ahead, Aaron.
So I've got a comment received actually on the 21st from Tom Wybell, who I believe is also in attendance over in the CJC basement. I will read that. This letter is in regards to a variance request for a 30-foot setback from a property line fence. As earlier stated, I am not opposed to the solar project going in. I only question where it is planned to be set. I've talked with Derek and understand why he is planning to install this. I'm 100% with his reasoning for this, just not its location. I understand the panels to be around 165 feet in length and around 6 feet high per panel. Not clear if panel will be side by side or stacked in unit. Then what their height will be after being mounted onto some type of support structure. We vacated our original road that would have passed through approximately where his garage now sits in 2011 in order to allow him to re-landscape this area to allow his present house to be built. In doing so, we purchased part of his property below the hill where we built the new road. Obviously, the new road being below the hill isn't as ideal as the old one was. Now we are being asked to have 165 foot by 12 foot length of solar panels 30 feet from the line fence, which we view daily. The runoff towards the road has always been a concern. This may make it worse. I believe this is to be considered a highly erodible area. I believe there should be a few other sites to consider. I've attached a printout of locations showing other various spots that should be considered. I also understand that Solar Connection Company will now have all the correct answers to why no other spot will work. All projects as we know, don't always go as planned. They usually need to be adjusted and modified to work. The first ideas are not always the best, only the most convenient. I believe a location in the small field south of the garage would be ideal. Number two, not located on the side of a hill, is about 40 feet from the house for electrical tie-in, or 200 feet from the original spot identified as the electrical tie-in point, which would be only about 100 feet farther for wire run than original specs called for. Sits on flat ground, easy to maintain, mow, full southern exposure, no obstacles in the way. About 0.17 of an acre of cropland would be given up, or about 165 feet by 30 feet piece of land. This would amount to giving up about $60 a year of corn on this piece of property at $3 a bushel, 180 bushels an acre, not figuring in costs for buying seed, planting, and harvesting costs. I'm certain any kilowatt produced per year with these solar panels will offset any profits losses associated with this small footprint of land use. I do not believe one has to tie in to their own electric grid to use the solar panel. When the power is fed back to the grid through the inverter setup, they have a meter to read what the panels are feeding into the electric grid. Then that meter is a deduct off of the homeowner's meter. Then, if this is possibly the main transformer at the end of the driveway, could be a tie-in point for the panels, which allows for other possible locations for the solar system, being it would be within a reasonable distance to the electrical grid. In summarizing all this up, I hope to have opened up some new ideas as possible locations that could work. If the first location is the only solution, I would ask it to be kept at the 50-foot setback, as to allow me some distance away from the property line. Thank you for listening to my concerns and working on a solution for everyone. Respectfully, Tom Weibel. And there are some maps here. This came in after your packets were mailed out, so we would not have had to get those to you. But if I were to try to describe, actually, perhaps Tom being in attendance, he might be able to do a better job of, describing the alternative he was referring to.
Well, one of the things also that, we had talked about, as far as, the east location there, beyond the retention ponds.
Hold on, Tim. Can you hold on and let Tom, I believe Tom's there. And then usually after with the public comments, the applicant's given an opportunity to.
Okay, of course.
Respond.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is Tom. I guess I got some concerns with the location of it by what you just read. I don't quite understand why this is the only spot we can go to. On that map that I sent you guys, and I guess some of you guys didn't get to see it yet, south of Derek's house, they have that small field that Derek rents. And I guess nobody else contested the variance. So that field would be roughly about 40 feet, the edge of that field about 40 feet, I think, from your garage there, Derek. To me, that would be almost a perfect location for what you're trying to do. You'd be 40 feet to the house instead of 98 feet to tie into your panels. We've got ample space there, and like I mentioned, I think the loss that you'd have on cropland would definitely be made up by the kilowatts you're feeding back into the grid. I think you guys are talking about feeding back in the grid, right? Or no?
Are you talking about what our percent offset is?
Well, yeah. You guys are running what, about 30 some kW?
Yeah, 37 kW. There is some,
So,
but one of the things is that it's while the offset is there, it's in the overall scheme of solar panel, the industry. We don't sell the benefit. We don't it's not the best way to make money, I guess is what I'd say. If you do get some offset, it's nice to have. And also over the decades, like when you get into the 30th and 40th year of the life of these, and there will be a certain amount of degradation, it's nice to have the productivity pad, if you will. Okay, so it's part of the long-term plan. As far as putting it in one place versus the other for the purpose of making more electricity to sell to the utility, we don't really factor that in. While we're talking about it, and you're talking about in the east field there, when we went out there, we saw where that field does kind of fall away. When you look at the contour, you go from a reasonably level area in the approximate area that we're proposing, and as you continue east, you do start kind of rolling away, and rolling away that is away from the house, and so that was the thing that was brought up in the site, during the site meetings.
So what percent difference is it?
I'm sorry, this is Aaron, and I don't mean to stifle the conversation, but can I ask, Tom, that you present your comments and questions to the board, and then Tim, if you want to answer those
Okay.
afterwards. We're just trying to get away from the back and forth between folks.
Okay, understood.
So how's this work? I guess I'm confused.
Well, I mean, present comments, and if you have questions about, how much energy they're going to generate, pose those to the board now, but you wouldn't get an answer from the applicants in the midst of your comments. They could address
okay.
later.
Okay. No, I was just obviously the impact or the footprint I got to put up with is the panels being there, the runoff. Like when Derek built the road, he understands how critical that road is to us. It's we gave up the one that was on top of the hill where his house sits, and we took this one, and I can't take a chance that I'm going to have runoff or snow drifts or erosion problems and not be able to get out. And then to sit there at 30 feet from my fence, I think I'm going to have problems in the future. I don't think anybody can guarantee what Mother Nature is going to give us, so I just think it's a poor location where up on top of the hill, like I say, south of Derek's garage there, I mean, we're in nobody's way. It's out of everybody's view. I think Derek would see it a little bit, but on the garage side, he's, them aren't where his windows are, so he's not going to be looking at it. And he'd have to give up that rental land, but he'd be, I think I said he'd be, where's that, about 40 some feet to the house. So if he ties in his electrical from the house, he'd be, at that point, he'd be roughly 50 feet closer to his building than I think he was at 98 feet on the other spec you guys had drawn here. So I don't know, it was an idea. I mean, if I understand it right, don't the panels rotate from 0 to 90 degrees? From vertical to horizontal. So I mean, we have the ability to rotate them to grab what we're trying to grab. I guess that's a question.
Well, and he'll answer it when we get it, when it's his turn.
Okay. I guess my thing is I think it's just a real poor location for how it's going to affect me. And we've got actually, in answering, I think you guys had a comment on there. What is it? Where you guys said they understand there's been no other. Let's see what I want. I got something written down there. It says, as stated on your application, the proposed location does provide the necessary access. So then why are we asking for a 30-foot setback? I guess the other question is, nobody else has contested this variance setback, so I guess any place else you have to go to a line fence shouldn't matter, because you could have a setback on any line fence because nobody's contesting it but me.
Are you more concerned about aesthetics or functionality? I guess I'm.
Well, I guess
don't
none of us would be. What's that?
I don't understand how it would be functionally. I mean, what would it? You're gonna have to explain why that would affect your road. Would it be because of additional snow, or
Well,
understand why that would be an impediment?
all right. Well, nobody can say we're not going to have erosion or runoff. Obviously, we've got, with them panels, we're looking at almost 2,000 square feet of surface area. On a bad rain like we had today, obviously that water runs off them panels in a different fashion than it just hits the ground.
Okay.
We don't know what's going to happen when these panels are sitting here, and now we have our winter comes and we got all the snow and the drifting. I mean, obviously I'm sitting below the hill, so I get anything that comes off the hill. If the erosion comes, that's an issue. Drifting's an issue. Obviously I don't want to look at it, but you know, I understand it's there, and I guess if we put it where everybody gets to look at it, then we all can share it. But then you know, I mean, it is what it is. We're going to see more and more of them in the world. So that and windmills. But I mean, if it's at the 50-foot setback, I guess then I don't have anything to say about it. I wish they could consider putting it in that field up there, and I think it would work for everybody. But you know, it's not my land.
Well,
So my biggest concern is that road has to be passable for me, and I'm not sure with all this being there, anybody can guarantee me that to be true.
yeah, I guess I mean, I understand, and I understand your concern. I don't know what would cause it to have a negative effect. I mean, it's.
Well, you got snow drifting.
But you have that.
You're gonna have a lot. You're gonna have a lot of runoff coming off them panels. I mean, if I have water coming off my roof, it hits the ground different than rain hitting it.
Okay, sure.
And if I get enough water in one spot, and we had the rains of 2007, so who knows what'll come. I guess I'd rather be safe than sorry. I mean, nobody can say what'll happen there.
Yep, that's true.
Larry, in the board, I guess for the sake of time, Tom, is that have you covered everything you wanted to bring to the board's attention?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's where I'm at with it. Is my main concern is the road and why we're doing that setback. If they already said it would fit on 50, I mean, if they got to have it right there and it's got to be at 50, you know, that's the setback rules, and there's nothing else I think we can say about that. But I'd like to see it kept at 50.
Those are all the comments that's the only comment we received in writing. And then, Amelia, is there anybody else in the CJC who wanting to speak?
No.
Larry, if I'm hand-holding too much, please tell me not to, but I know
No, that's fine.
the order with you. Commonly, the applicant's given an opportunity to
Yep.
respond after comments.
I would guess that's Tim, or
Yeah, I'm here.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to stay with the meeting in order of the meeting. So this is for me to discuss.
Yes, good. I don't know if you
I've been
took
following.
notes on all of them. I know one of them might put notes on what
No,
is the
I'm-
height of this.
Yeah, I've been taking some notes. One of the things that that was raised as a concern, about the driveway, is that in the wintertime, if you get shade on the driveway during the day, you're going to make ice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of it's everyone knows that, and so we did address that, and what we found is that, and we did take the measurements, and in the worst case, which would be 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the height of the sun, we're probably at least a good 8 or 9 feet away from the edge of the road. I would bring up at this time that going to the west of the driveway, there are trees that are planted there, and just as a public service, I would say those things are definitely going to create shade problems. But I want to say that the array, as proposed, will not create that. And one thing to know is that, I understand your concern about, water runoff. We get some pretty good gully washers here. And one of the things to know is that the angle of the panels is, for one thing, facing away. They will drain away rather than toward the driveway. And also part of, when you look at the map, you don't even need a contour map. There's a fairly considerable engineered drain, that goes, that's on the north side of the driveway there, because with or without panels, I know you already have, a drainage situation that has already been mitigated. So, which means that it was not only cut, but it was properly graded and drafted and, things of that nature. And so, we try to be sensitive to all the impacts that, we can have there. I understand what you're saying, water runs differently off the roof. But the thing here is that the width of the panels, that is the 2 panel stack, is less than a roof. And also we're proposing to move half of it even farther away, which for any amount of drainage that could be considered an issue, I don't think there's an issue, but we're trying to take a belt and suspenders approach to further get away from the situation and take care of the needs of the integrity and the structure of the road.
I've got a question. I've got a question.
Yes.
These panels, for lack of a better way to say it, how wide are they?
You mean like each panel of panels? I think that they're approximately, they're about 4 feet wide.
Okay, and then do they shed water uphill? I mean, I know water runs downhill, but are these tilted so that they drop the water on the uphill side or the low hill side?
They will drop it on the uphill side because they have to face south. They are tilted 30 degrees toward the south, the equator, if you will. Okay. So their runoff will be toward the residence, not toward the road.
Not toward the driveway. So
correct.
And they obviously aren't going to add anything.
No.
So they don't have a group opening. They all shed all along the whole array.
Correct.
Okay.
I could ask a question just to maybe clarify something for me, but for the board's benefit. In terms of the supports that hold the panels up, what effect does that have on the impervious or pervious nature of the ground? Are you changing how the water would be absorbed?
No, as we are proposed, we're going to be. These are going to be a driven like a post. It's not. It's a profiled heavy metal channel piece and go several feet in the ground. But you know, we don't have to do all the heavy concrete pour or things of that nature. And they are in. We drive them in robustly so that you know they don't cause shift or anything like that.
I've got a question on the height. How close are they? If they're 4 feet wide, I'm calling it. How close to the ground are they on the uphill side and on the downhill side?
Okay, on the downhill side, I'll call it the driveway side.
Okay,
They're going to be about 9 feet or a little more, and yeah, about 9 feet tall. And then on the where they facing toward the residence, which is where they're sloping down, it's going to be about 3 feet.
about 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, in places it'll be a little more, but as a worst case, I think the worst case, they're not going to be closer than 30 inches. As necessary as what we find, what we will do when we install them, we can mount them, you know, nominally a little bit higher, and I don't mean 5 feet higher, but you know, like a foot higher. We have we're very robust as far as any potential for shading on the road. You know, we would have to probably put them 7 or 8 feet higher before we created that, and that's not ever going to happen. So in summary, they're going to be about 9 feet high on the high side and about 3 feet off the ground on the uphill side.
All right, that's what I was interested in. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to have you address the drifting issue. That seemed to be a significant concern, possibly in the winter. Would there be potential for drifting onto the driveway based on the fact that these panels would act like a snow fence?
You know, they're pretty far away from the driveway. From the standpoint of you know, the impact of snowdrift. Snowdrift is going to be more of a potential issue for the panels than having any impact just, you know, on the driveway. You know, even at 30 feet, you know, they're a fair distance away. You know, the thing that can happen with panels is if they get they're going to be 43 feet away from the driveway. So the issue is how much potential drifters are going to be over that distance is the question, and I don't think it really rises as an issue that is going to create a problem for the road. I don't think it's going to create a problem for the panels either, because as you know, when you go from the road to the panels, from the panels up to the residence, it starts getting really fairly steep. You know, for those of us who are out on site walking up and down them, and so that's not going to be a drift accumulation area.
One other question. If the electricity is put back onto the grid as opposed to used by the owner, what is the difference in the value of that electricity?
That's really the answer to the question is having to do with utility and interconnection policy, and any excess electricity that you generate is sold essentially, or because it's delivered to the grid. It's measured out of the meter, and it's sold at the base rate.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is there a difference between, a significant difference between using the electricity on site versus just selling it back to the grid and then using a grid electricity? Is there a significant difference between those two?
Well, you know, the way it works is that, you get everything set up and it feeds through a meter. And so it's what's called net metering. There will be times of the day, like in the middle of the night, when the residents uses much more electricity than it produces.
Yeah, I understand that part. I'm just asking about the value of it per unit.
Per kilowatt hour?
Yeah, or however you want to measure it.
Yeah, that's how, we would measure it. It's the same.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Now back on the snow drifts. Obviously none of you have had to come out here and plow that road. So.
Well, we've never had to plow that road. That's true. We have had to plow roads though.
Well, I don't quite have as big a truck as you guys got. I mean, to me, you guys are setting me up for a possible big headache there.
All right, let's keep it to Caston Group. Do you have more things you want to touch on in your response?
I don't think so. I'm doing my best to provide information and answer questions, particularly about how they function and what they do. And I'm there for that. I don't have anything else to offer actually.
Guys,
right.
Gentlemen, this is Derek. I have one last thing to say to the board. I am here to take care of the country and the environment as best I can and try to manage my $300 to $500 a month bills. I'm just trying to do the best thing and not be a nemesis to anyone or any way put anybody's safety at risk. I am trying to just mitigate extremely expensive rates out here in the rural area. And I entertained an option. I'm not here to make any enemies. I would just like to move forward in a positive way as a citizen of La Crescent Township and respect all of your people's time and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Larry, I don't think there's any other members of the public. Do you want, I guess at this point you could consider closing the public hearing and then the board could discuss if you wanted to?
Yep. I want to close the public meeting, return to the Board of Adjustment meeting. So this now becomes between the board members.
Okay, do I mute myself now?
Or just
Yeah,
be
please.
quiet.
The board might ask questions at this point, but if a question's not posed to you, please don't interject.
Okay, I'm going to mute unless you call for me.
All right, sounds good.
Aaron, I have a question. Tom had about the going to the south side by the garage, but that would require a variance also, wouldn't it?
It appears so. If you look at the.
I mean, that's what I see. That no matter what you do on the south side of his property would require a variance no matter what we do.
That appears to be the case. Yeah.
All right. Okay, close, return to the board, close public meeting, reconvene Board of Adjustment. Site visit, do we have to discuss that? I don't know. Did everybody, do the site visit?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
well. So, now what are the members of the board what are the concerns you have? What is the discussion?
Well, this is Franklin. When I was over there, I looked at that potential site in the field. To me, it looks like the site that they're proposing looked like the most benefit for the sunlight. I can't quite visualize that bank washing away myself because of the grass structure there, and they're not going to disturb it. They're going to pound posts in, or they're not going to dig them in, they're going to pound them in. I don't see myself that there's a big erosion issue there.
Thank you. I'm struggling with that. I guess as Tom said, you never can tell. And just to verify my bearings here, the driveway is on the north side of this panel's suggested location, right?
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
over the hill, and I'm trying to think, if you have a north wind, I don't see that panel is gonna adversely affect that road. And if you have a south wind, I don't see how that would affect it. It may benefit it. It'll slow the wind down going across that road to some extent. So I mean, I understand it's unknown, and you know, it's like once it's done, it's done. And if it has an adverse effect, then I have to deal with that. But I'm struggling to see that it would have an adverse effect. I don't know if any of the other members of the board understand what I'm saying. Will want to comment on that.
Well, it is precisely the slowing of the wind that causes the snow to drop and create a drift. It's, you know, just like a snow fence effect.
Well, and it's how many feet from the road? It may, I mean, if that was actually a snow fence, it would probably be beneficial because the snow would drop before it got to the driveway.
Good point.
Well, are there any other comments?
Could I ask the board to have some conversation about the initial proposal where they're all linear, and then the other proposal that was described to you earlier today where half of them are with not meeting the setback and the other half meet? Do you view that differently? Would you view them, or I guess, could you just have some conversation about that?
This is Ken Anderson. I like the amended proposal a lot better than the initial.
I would be curious of Tom's perspective on that. Do you like the second one better or the initial one?
What is the setback that's closest to the 50 feet? Is that the amended one?
Half of it would be at the 50 foot.
The amended one?
Yeah.
So how close are we to the 50?
Because
they said there's 5 feet difference on between the
oh,
poles.
that would be the part we have to give a variance. Basically, only about half of the panel would need a variance at all. The eastern half would be far beyond the 50-foot set.
The eastern half. Okay. Is that the only choice we got now, or they?
We're just asking your opinion of that.
Well, I'd like to see the 50-foot setback, but I'd really like to see a totally different location. I mean, have they just looked at along the road where they drive in? I mean, on the north end of that, south end of that? I mean, that would be.
All the board members visited on site over there, so I think we all looked at different proposed sites. At least I did when I was there.
I guess I'm just confused that something on top of the hill on the flat wouldn't be more practical than something up against the side of a hill.
So Brian, you would ask Tom if you viewed the split proposal or the initial proposal better. And Tom, is it correct that if you're looking at just those two options, your preference would be the split?
Well, when they're split, so where will one panel start? I mean, on the where would we be, on the west side? How
As I
far would
the west side would start where it was initially proposed, and it would run approximately 90 feet as it was initially proposed. And then it would end, and there would be another 90-foot section that would run parallel to that, but set back to 50 feet.
So set back more towards the house?
Correct.
Towards their house. Yeah.
But they can't move the first one back any farther than 30 feet.
Not without raising it.
And is there a reason they can't raise it?
Takes all the concrete. You have to have heavier posts.
And it'd probably be more effective at blocking the wind.
And it would more likely
drifts.
get high enough up the vine tree at the shading.
See, and that kind of comes back to you got the panels facing the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, why if you're on top of the hill where there was nothing in front of you, wouldn't that just to me would make more sense.
All right, board, do you want to continue discussing? And I guess unless you have other questions, let's try to keep it to the board.
Yeah. Are there any, do any of the board members have any other comments or concerns? Any questions that you think you need to, or any more information you need before we go into the findings? Hearing none, shall we move on to the findings?
Sure.
All right. I can take care of that. So we'll start. Number one, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Staff analysis says the zoning ordinance identifies as a purpose is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens by implementing policies and standards that conserve energy, such as solar. An additional goal that is identified in multiple locations of the comp plan and ordinance is preserving our ag land, and the fact that the land in the proposed location is not used is one of the many reasons the array is proposed in that location. Ken Anderson?
Yes. I agree with staff analysis.
Larry?
Yes, I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
Yes, I agree.
Brian?
Yes.
Two, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. The application identifies that obstacles such as the septic, geothermal, and underground LP tank and existing landscaping obstruct placement to the east and south of the dwelling. While there is vacant area west of the shop and active farmland, the contractor identifies that from a technology standpoint, the north location is more ideal. Shadow analysis shows that there is less interference and more sun exposure at the north location, and the contractors identify a much smaller environmental impact in that proposed location. Solar arrays have gained in popularity in the county and do not alter the essential character of the ag district. Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
I agree with staff analysis.
Brian?
I say no. I think that the site that is next to the garage there would be adequate, and it would be better for the neighbor.
Ken Anderson?
I agree with staff analysis.
Three, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Well, the landowners did in fact decide where to locate permanent structures. It is assumed that potentially locating a solar array was not a plan at that time. Topography is also important as southern exposure is necessary to make solar power efficient, and of the two potential options, the proposed location provides the most functional. Franklin?
I agree with staff analysis.
Brian?
I would say yes, but I would also like to say that now another spot is used up. Eventually all the spots are used up. You have to plan ahead on these things. We can't just say that because we failed to plan ahead before, now we have to create a variance.
Ken Anderson,
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry,
I agree with staff analysis.
Four, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. As shown in the site plan, there are multiple systems south and east of the dwelling that prevent the array from being constructed in those locations. Slopes on tillable acreage to the east become 18% or greater. The tillable acreage to the west does not provide as many total sun hours and is also active farmland, while the area to the north is idle. In addition, moving the array towards the residence reduces the available sunlight and would require the array to be raised, which increases the need for material. Brian,
No, there are other locations.
Ken Anderson,
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry,
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin,
Yes, I agree with staff analysis.
5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. This is an area dominated by rural residential properties and ag. The landowners have implemented many systems to achieve energy independence and reduce environmental impact. In addition, the system will need to meet building, electrical, and utility codes designed for minimizing hazards. If installed to code, solar arrays do not endanger public health, safety, or welfare of those in the vicinity and most likely will increase property values. Ken Anderson,
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry,
I agree.
Franklin,
Yes, I agree.
Brian.
Yes.
6, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards lower than those required by state law. This location is not in floodplain or shoreline. The proposal will not affect the regulatory flood protection elevation and does not permit standards lower than those required by state law. Solar arrays are a permitted use and becoming common throughout the county in all zoning districts. Larry,
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin,
Yes, I agree.
Brian,
Yes.
and Ken Anderson.
Yes.
All right, that concludes your findings, Larry.
Larry, at this point, I would advise that you could seek a motion to adopt the findings that you've just made. I would also ask that you clarify that these findings that were just made were for the split option or the initial option.
It's for this,
I understood it was the split option, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding that in the same way everyone else was.
I agree, that's a good point. I would entertain a motion to adopt the findings and with the understanding that it is for the split option. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion. Ken
I'll
Anderson.
second it.
I have a motion seconded. We do a roll call vote.
Ken Anderson,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Brian.
No.
Okay, give me 1 second to do a couple notes here on that motion, then we would, Amelia, can you propose some language for them to consider for a final motion?
Perhaps you could use a motion to grant a 20-foot variance to allow the placement of a ground-mounted solar array 30 feet from the north property line.
Sounds good.
better mention the split array in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to include that in there as well.
I would propose that we could add that as a condition on the variance, and it would say that at 50% of the, or I guess we could approach it a couple ways. We could limit the linear feet that is allowed under this variance. That doesn't have to meet the setback. That might be the best way to do it. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Could I ask, and I'm sorry to backtrack here, but who made the motions for the findings again?
Ken
I
Anderson
think-
and I seconded. Franklin,
Okay.
I seconded.
Okay. And in terms of the language regarding the condition on the variance, I would suggest that we might inquire with the Castons or the contractor about
I agree.
Yeah. And,
Jim, is that gonna put you in a bind? I mean,
Okay, I just unmuted myself and restate the question.
well, what the board is looking to do is how do we move forward here by making it clear that what they're considering here is the option 2. And we could simply
Okay.
refer to it as option 2, but we thought we might say that this variance applies to a certain linear footage of panels that you would put within the setback.
Okay.
Would you be able to easily provide us with how many feet that would require right now?
At the moment, let's see. Well, if we're talking about 165 feet, divide that by 2, that's going to be like 82 and a half feet. 82,
If they
You know,
said
we would-
90 feet, would that accomplish what they're looking to accomplish here?
I believe it would, yes.
Okay, so board, you heard all that. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Go with 90 as long as they're comfortable that that's a workable solution.
From our standpoint of the construction and the quality of the end product, that's workable for us.
All right. Thank you.
One moment here, and I'll have some language for you to consider.
All right, thanks.
Going to mute myself.
While we're doing this, I guess it's implied that the height is as it was presented tonight. So my thought is that it's not necessary to again specify that it can't go any taller. The board certainly could if that's a concern, but it's my guidance to you that when you approve or deny this, if you were to approve it, you're approving it as it's presented this evening.
I agree with that, and if we wanted to do anything, maybe we could specify the I don't know how you'd specify it, the pounded in post versus the one set in concrete.
I would say the same thing, that's as presented this evening. So in terms of the array that they're looking to place outside of the setback, they could mount those in any way they want, but
Yeah, I guess.
tonight, when they're asking for this variance, you're approving it as they've presented it, and as they presented it, it is with pounded supports.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then the motion would be motion to grant. Amelia, could you restate that?
You say
Motion
motion
to
to grant a variance of 20 feet to allow placement of a ground-mounted solar array, 30 feet from the north property line.
And then the condition would, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, with the condition that this variance applies to 90 linear feet of panels.
Okay,
Yes.
that'll work.
Did you want the pounded posts in there, or is that just a given?
you certainly
your
could
motion.
include it if you wanted to. It's my advice to you that you're approving their plan as they presented it to you tonight. So they have presented it that way. They have not presented it in a different fashion.
Okay, I'm just asking. That's fine.
Aaron,
Okay.
could you read that motion again?
Yeah,
The proposed motion?
Oh, you gonna read that, Aaron?
yeah, I'm just trying to get it typed in. Give me one second.
Okay.
Motion to grant a variance of 20 feet to allow placement of a ground-mounted solar array 30 feet from the north property line, with the
Whoa.
condition that this variance
sorry.
applies to 90 linear feet of panels.
Mounted on pounded in posts.
Okay, am I hearing you want to add a second condition to specify the posts are pounded in?
Yeah.
So that will say panels shall be mounted on, could I ask the solar contractors to suggest some language here, board?
This is Tim.
What's the industry lingo for how I would want to say that?
That we're using pounded as opposed to concrete poured. Just a moment here. They're pile driven is what they're called. Pile driven as opposed to poured. So what we have proposed, along the line is that, and what we're, and the language should reflect that they will be mounted on pile driven posts.
Got it. So I'll cover everything here, and then Larry, you can seek a motion perhaps.
Yep.
The motion would be motion to grant a variance of 20 feet to allow placement of a ground-mounted solar panel array 30 feet from the north property line with two conditions. The variance is limited to 90 linear feet of ground-mounted solar array. And number two, support posts shall be pile driven.
Sounds good. Do
Now,
I hear a-
Aaron, did you say poured posts or did you say posts?
I said support
Post
posts.
support. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. That's
No, no
fine.
problem.
That's fine. That's fine.
Do I hear a motion to recommend?
I'll make the motion for that as you presented.
Recommending this to the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, this is a
And-
variance. So this is you're taking care of it all here tonight, and that's a motion from Ken
I'll
Yes.
second it, Franklin.
and Franklin seconds. Okay, Ken Anderson,
Aye.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Brian.
No.
Okay, motion passes.
All right. When will it go to the board or supervisors?
Well, this being a variance,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah, it won't go to the board, but I believe that we have I'm not sure if we have an application that's been on hold because of this. If not, we could work on getting one submitted. If so, we would proceed on review. But Tim and Derek, we would be in touch with you next week.
Excuse me, this is Tim. Who will I be contacting next week?
Tim, I'll continue to be your contact.
Okay, very good, thank you.
All right. You ready for the next one, Aaron?
If we could take a pause here and
Sure.
assign some names to phone numbers. I've got a bunch of folks on the line here. I'm going to read the last four digits of your phone number, and if you could tell me a name, I'll assign one to you. And I'm hoping we have our applicants online. If it looks like they're all muted now, if you're calling in on a phone, if you hit *6, that'll unmute. Phone number ending in 7708. Who is that, please?
Jim Weezer.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Aaron.
phone number ending in 0774. Who is that, please?
You guys are done with me, right?
Phone number ending in 8942.
That's me. That's Tim Clancy. Although tonight I came in on my laptop rather than my phone.
Oh, I have you on the meeting on 8942 as well, but okay. Phone
Yeah,
number
he's even-
ending
I'm
in
sorry.
9927. Okay, I'm seeing, it looks like Jared Cords is on. He joined via computer. So if it's all right with the board, I will read that notice and we'll get underway.
Yes, please.
Please take notice that an application was received from Jared Cords of Money Creek Township. Hearing on this application will be held at 6:30 on September 24th. Due to the health pandemic and pursuant to Minnesota statutes, this meeting is taking place via telephone. Folks who wanted to monitor the meeting by telephone needed to have contacted the zoning office by the 22nd. All persons having an interest in the matter were given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of the application. Comments needed to be received by September 15th. Those comments that were received by that date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the board prior to the meeting, and this was advertised on the 9th. Okay, Amelia, can you give an overview of the staff report?
Yeah. So Jared and Cords had purchased a 7-acre parcel in October of 2006, just south of his parents' farm. And later that year, he received a conditional use permit to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres. And then shortly thereafter, his zoning permit. The original dwelling at that time was believed to have met all the buildable lot standards in place that are actually still in place today. Last year on Halloween night, then they had a house fire, and it ended up being a total loss. It was pretty traumatic for their kids, and his young daughter suffered injuries from that. But the house now, the concrete foundation still remains, but it's not at a usable state. So then they submitted an application in August to construct their new dwelling, and during that review process, it was found that their new proposed location is too close to the registered feedlot across the road. That feedlot has 16.875 animal units of beef cattle, which is under the required registered limit for registration, but it is a registered feedlot nonetheless. And so we did ask the Planning Commission, who's acting as the Feedlot Advisory Committee, to review that site, and we'll have a memo for that later. And then did you want to touch on the soils at this point, Aaron?
Sure. So as many of you probably know, homes, non-farm homes or homes on less than 40 acres are restricted on class 1 through 3 soils. When we looked at the new location, we found that it was a class 3 soil. We then reviewed the old location, found that that's also a class 3 soil. Given that, we worked with the attorney's office and came up with an analysis, which I'll read to you tonight, but the gist of it is that they were given a property right in 2006 when the county issued them 2 permits to build that home. And that property right, it's a conditional use permit, it runs with the land. So they still have a property right for a home. And due to various factors, it seems as though they cannot put a home on that parcel without it being on class class 3 soils. So whether it was, however it ended up being in 2006 that they were granted that, they were granted it, and it continues through. But I'll read the memo that we'll have in the file regarding it. In 2006, Jared Cord was issued a CUP and a zoning permit for the placement of a dwelling. In 2019, the dwelling was lost in a house fire. In September of 2020, Cord submitted an application for a replacement dwelling. For multiple reasons, foremost, the desire to be physically distanced from the prior location, the replacement is proposed at a new location. Based on several factors discussed below, the replacement dwelling will be allowed on class 3 soils. The fundamental consideration is that the 2006 permitting actions granted Cords a property right, i.e. a dwelling. The dwelling was constructed on class 3 soils, which was prohibited under ordinances in effect in 2006. Whether this was accidental or intentional is unknown, but the conclusion of this analysis is not dependent on either scenario. The permitting action created a property right in either case. Class 3 soils are present on the eastern 3/4 of the parcel. The remaining area is class 4 and class 6 soils. Thus, under the ordinance in effect in 2006, dwelling was prohibited on the eastern 3/4 of the parcel. Steep slopes are also present on the parcel and become increasingly steeper as one moves west. A bluff is present on the western edge of the parcel. The top of the bluff was estimated using the 50-foot line segment method and determined to be near the elevation of 1,149 feet based on the slope to the northwest of the previous dwelling. The top of bluff location closely corresponds with the transition from class 3 to class 4 soils. In 2006 and current standards and ordinance prohibit structure placement on bluffs and require setbacks from the top of a bluff. Taken together, and I guess this is the part I'll underscore, taken together, the bluff standards and the soil standards seem to prohibit the permitting of a dwelling on the parcel entirely. Yet in 2006, the county did issue permits and by doing so, established a property right. The placement of the 2006 house was not done under an older version of zoning rules that have since undergone changes that were adverse to the Cords. Rather, the rules surrounding soil class and bluffs have remained substantially unchanged from 2006 to 2020. Therefore, it would be improper to consider Cords House to have been a nonconformity. Its placement and the property right established thereby is properly understood to be as the Board of Commissioners intended it to be under an ordinance substantially similar to that of today. The question becomes, how should the replacement and continuation of a property right such as Cords be approached? As a starting place, any outcome must not extinguish Cords' property right. Left are 3 options. Number 1, replacement on soils prohibited by ordinance. Number 2, replacement on a bluff prohibited by ordinance. Or number 3, requirement of a variance for either option 1 or 2. Requiring a variance cannot ensure an outcome that does not extinguish Cords' property right and is therefore rejected. Replacement on a bluff introduces a new noncompliance not associated with the initial dwelling and can arguably be considered a larger degree of noncompliance because all categories of dwellings, farm and non-farm, and structures are prohibited on bluffs. For these reasons, it is rejected. Option 1 allows for continuation of the property right established in 2006 and on the same soil class. It is therefore, in light of the situation, the best option available. Be happy to take any questions any of the board members have on that at this time.
Aaron, I got a question, Franklin.
Yeah.
When my hay shed burned down, I went to get a building permit, and at the zoning office, and they said, well, you had enough loss. When your building burns down, you don't need a building permit. My neighbor's house burned down, and he didn't need one. Is this changed? The policy has changed, or I wanted to find out why he needs a variance and a building permit.
I guess I can't speak to, I'm not aware that there was ever anything in the ordinance that would have allowed replacement without a permit. There is language in the ordinance that allows us to waive all the fees associated with replacement for a catastrophic loss, which we've done in this case. But I guess I don't know under what language they waived a permit requirement in the past. Your second
well,
question,
maybe that was a permit then that I didn't pay any, or we didn't pay, neighbor didn't pay any, and I didn't then. So I guess you clarified it for for me.
You know, Franklin, now that I think about it, you said a hay shed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so agricultural buildings did not require zoning permits before 2004, so that may well be the reason.
Oh, this was built after that, but that's all right. Go ahead.
The second part of your question, why the variance? It has to do with the fact that he's proposing it in a new location. So if he was looking to build it, you know, right atop where it was before, there would not have been a need for a variance. But when he shifted it to the east, it shifted into a feedlot setback. So it's, you know, the fact that it's stemming from a tragic event doesn't change those setback requirements. If it would have previously been within that setback, that might have been a different calculation. But he moved from outside the setback to inside the setback.
Okay.
Any other questions on how we're proposing dealing with the soils and the property right that Mr. Cords would have based on the 2006 permit?
Hearing none, shall we move on to applicant comments? Is the applicant here?
Yeah, Jared, I'm going to try to, yeah, he's on mute.
Yeah, what do you want?
We'd like to hear your version and hear your concerns and why and how you're doing this.
Well, you kind of know the gist of it, I guess. You know, we had a house fire and stuff, and
Yep.
and we didn't want to. I want to build out there, but I didn't want to build on the same spot just because the kids. I don't want them to, how would you say, freak out, to have nightmares and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
just,
that's
you know, we moved it out to that location because that's where the wife liked it there. So so we were like, well, that'll work, you know. So it didn't dawn on me that I was in the feedlot area. I didn't even think of that, you know, until after the fact, you know, when Aaron called me or whatever. There was another spot that we talked about, but then the excavator and the carpenter, and that one or the other spot I could move it was a lot more, how would you say it? The grade was way steeper and way worse than where we, you know, that's why we moved it to where it is, because it was a lot flatter ground and it wouldn't mess with the ground or any erosion or anything like that, you know. And the other spot there was it was a lot steeper, I would say, a lot worse on erosion and stuff like that. So
sure.
I can see that.
So that's basically it, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
Do we have Aaron? Did we get any comments from this? Are there any people that are dialed in or on the phone wish to make a comment?
Well, we did receive written comments, so I could read those into the record now.
Sure.
Parental advisory, there's some language in this comment. I guess you've all seen it in your package, but it's not too objectionable. This is addressed to me, and it is it's signed Wayne Meyer of Double Diamond Farm, Money Creek Township Board Supervisor. And he writes, yes, Aaron, I have a comment in regards to the variance for Jared Cords. I don't understand why you are forcing Jared to even apply for a variance. I think you have to learn how to communicate with people a little bit. I know Volkman has a feedlot permit, but did you bother to talk with him? Did you bother to look at his permit renewals to see how many animals he has had on feed since he had the permit? The answer is no. Your hard-ass tactics that you are imposing on people here in Money Creek Township are not making you real popular. I know you think you have to do everything according to the book that you were taught from. Come on, get a life. I think the Cords family has been through enough without you adding to it. And then P.S. I would prefer you read this letter at your meeting, and that's signed Wayne Meyer. And I guess I would ask that I did respond to Wayne, and if it's okay with the board, I would ask that I could also read you my response.
Sure.
So I wrote, Dear Supervisor Meyer, this letter is in response to the comments you submitted regarding the Jared Cords variance application. You raised several points in your letter, and I will address each of these individually below. The state feedlot program is administered locally by my office. When assessing Mr. Cord's application, we reviewed Richard Volkman's feedlot registrations from 2001, 2006, 2009, 2013, 2017, and 2020. Mr. Volkman's 2020 registration indicates 16.87 animal units. The fact that this number of animals is below the threshold at which registration is mandatory was communicated to Mr. Volkman in the cover letter accompanying his registration renewal form sent to him earlier this year. Nevertheless, Mr. Volkman returned his registration on July 13th and thus has a registered feedlot. Upon receiving Mr. Cord's application, I did not again contact Mr. Volkman to verify that he indeed intended to register his feedlot, but assumed that he had sufficient agency when completing his registration a mere 2 months earlier, as well as during the 5 registrations preceding it. In light of this, you provide an incorrect response to the rhetorical questions you pose in your letter. The feedlot was reviewed and found to be a registered feedlot. I disagree with your description of my approach toward this application. My primary responsibility is to administer the zoning laws of the county. In this case, the specific zoning requirement in question is section 33.16 subdivision 6, which reads, residential dwelling setback from feedlot. New dwellings and the expansion of existing dwellings other than the feedlot's owners or family members' dwellings less than 1/4 mile from a registered feedlot shall be reviewed by the Feedlot Advisory Committee and shall require the granting of a site-specific variance from the Board of Adjustment. Also relevant, Houston County Zoning Ordinance Section 3.5 Subdivision 1, parentheses 2, the words shall or will are mandatory and not discretionary. The words may and should are permissive. And Minnesota Statutes 394.27 sub 7, the Board of Adjustment shall have the exclusive power to order the issuance of variances from the requirements of any official control. This language is unambiguous, and any good faith reading makes clear that I have no discretion regarding whether a variance is required in order for Mr. Cords to build a dwelling within a 1/4 mile of feedlot. Thus, I am not applying tactics of any sort, hard-assed, to use your language or otherwise, but I'm simply administering the laws as clearly written. Whether doing so results in my being unpopular is irrelevant. This is my job. I share your view that given the circumstances surrounding the Cords application, the permitting process should be made as easily as possible. To address an area where I was able to exercise some discretion, Section 5.2 sub 7 allows permit fees to be waived in the event of a loss by disaster, but does not specifically provide that waivers apply to public hearings. I interpreted this in a way to allow Mr. Cord's variance application to be submitted with no fee. Finally, and perhaps most troubling, you are critical of my fidelity to the book, by which I understand you to mean the law generally and specifically the Houston County Zoning Ordinance. I sincerely hope I've misread your comment, and so I will directly ask, is it correct for me to understand that a township board supervisor is advocating for me to take actions prohibited under state and county law so that Mr. Cords can avoid a variance hearing? If this is the case, your comment is noted but will not be acted upon. If I've misunderstood your position, please clarify. And I guess to note, I have not received a clarification onto what he was asking.
Well done, I would say.
I believe that those are unless anybody is on the line, I don't know. We've got some numbers on there that I don't recognize, but we didn't get a response when we asked for names. But if someone's on the line or in the room who has a comment, now would be the time.
Well, hearing none, there's really the next order applicant's response is.
Larry, can I provide?
Sure.
Can I provide the Feedlot Advisory Committee's recommendations quick,
Yes,
just to get those on record?
thank you.
So, as I stated before, the Planning Commission acts as the Feedlot Advisory Committee. I did receive 2 phone responses and 3 email responses, so 5 out of the 7. An email from Jim Weezer said that having viewed the building site on Dump Hill Road, I would recommend approval of variance for a dwelling within the setback of a feedlot at the estimated 180 feet. The feedlot is approved for less than 20 animal units, and also the fact that the proposed dwelling site is west of the feedlot. This will provide the benefit from prevailing winds, aiding less nuisance from odors. As you stated, moving the site further west will interfere with natural drainage. An email from Ed Hamel says, visited the site Friday, September 11th with a small number of animal units and apparent seasonal grazing of animals. I see no problem with a variance of 180 feet to satisfy the quarter-mile setback requirement. He goes on further to kind of discuss ordinance things. It may be worth considering a change to the setback requirement to allow building closer to a feedlot if it is, for an example, less than the 50 animal units. Also, it should be noted that since a family member is allowed to build a residence closer to their feedlot, perhaps anyone who understands the possible negative consequences should also be allowed to do so. A house built by a family member could easily be occupied by someone else in the future. Per phone call with Rich Shield, he expressed a concern that it could possibly be prime egg soils, but had no issue with the proposal. An email from Greg Myrie states, I looked at the site for Jared Cords, all looked good. I feel there should be no problems with building at that location. And per phone call, Larry, he had no issues with the proposal either. And I don't know if you want to provide anything else, Larry, being you sit on both boards. If not a big deal.
No, I really don't have much to say about it. I see there's a big ravine there. And there's really no reason for him not to be able to do that I'm aware of. So that would be public testimony. Does the applicant want to respond to any of that? Want to say anything about that?
No, I'm good. It sounds pretty good.
All right. We'll close the public hearing. Return to the Board of Adjustment meeting. Site visit. I guess we just pretty well.
Aaron, just a question for you. If we approve this variance, does now the feedlot operator, if he wants to upgrade and upgrade the feedlot, does he now have to go through a variance? Or is there a way of exempting him from doing that?
I don't know if there'd be a way of exempting him. It would depend on the nature of the expansion. So he would be holding his line for his current numbers, certainly. So if he was doing an expansion that didn't get closer and didn't involve, or I guess if he was doing construction that didn't involve moving closer to the home or new animal units, he would not need to do anything. If he was proposing, a large increase in numbers or expansion that moved closer to the home, yes, the feedlot setbacks apply both ways.
All right. Is there any other board discussion? Comments, recommendations? Hearing none, shall we move forward with the findings? Huh?
So I can begin that. So number 1, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. A dwelling in the Ag District is a reasonable and common request. The comp plan identifies a few major reasons for putting limits in place on non-farm development, such as building on less than 40 acres. But aside from realizing that ag is a vital part of our economy and we want to preserve those resources, the goal is also to minimize urban and rural conflicts and minimize local service costs. Jared and Aaron built their first home on this land they purchased from his parents, who actively farmed, and utilities already exist there. This family fully understands farm and country living and is asking to continue that life. Ken Anderson.
I'll agree with staff analysis.
Larry?
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin?
Yes, I agree.
Brian?
Yes, I would like to add 2 points though. One is that if the feedlot does intend to expand in the future, there'd be no objection that could be added as a condition. And also that the old building site, which is just a couple pieces of cement there, should be reclaimed, because under normal circumstances, we would require that the house be rebuilt at the old site.
Number 2, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. While the foundation from the old dwelling is still present, the applicant states it is not adequate to be reused. By locating the house closer to Dump Hill Road, less excavation and disturbance will need to take place, which will reduce erosion potential. That land has been in row crops and is adequate to accommodate a dwelling. The applicant states that being further away from the site will be better for the mental health of his children who were traumatized from the event. Larry.
I agree with staff analysis.
Franklin.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes, I agree with staff analysis, and the reason is because this is a hardship case.
Ken.
Yes.
Number 3. The variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. The fire was out of the applicant's control, and topography of the site limits them to rebuilding east of the old site. While there may appear to be adequate space to build between the feedlot setback and the existing foundation, as you get closer to Dump Hill Road, the slopes lessen and the soil is better. Franklin.
I agree with staff analysis.
Brian.
Yes, and again, because of the difficulties experienced by this family already.
Ken.
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry.
I agree.
Four, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. For the sake of his children's mental health, the applicant wishes to build further away from the old dwelling. The proposed location has better soil, and the excavating contractor had concerns over settling if the structure was pushed further west, closer to the old site. Brian.
Yes, and again, I would normally vote no on this, but I'm making an exception because of the difficulties experienced by this family.
Ken.
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry.
I agree.
Franklin.
Yes, I agree.
5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. This request will continue to allow the property to function as it has for the past 13 years and is consistent with other properties in Money Creek Township and within Houston County. The applicant grew up just north of the site in addition to living here for over a decade and has an understanding of what living near a feedlot entails. Ken.
I agree with staff analysis.
Larry.
I agree staff analysis with the, I think this is significant.
Franklin.
Yes, I agree.
Brian.
Yes, but again, I would recommend a condition that there be no resistance to a future expansion of that feedlot, because that would impact the property value of that feedlot.
Okay. 6, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Siting of a dwelling is an area variance and a permitted use in the Ag District. In addition, this request will not affect flood protection elevations and standards. Larry?
I agree.
Franklin?
Yes, I agree.
Brian?
Yes, I agree. Staff analysis.
Ken?
Yes, I agree.
Larry, that concludes the findings.
Okay, we got a motion here. Well, we got to, do I have a motion to accept the findings, please?
I'll make that
So moved.
motion.
I'll second it.
Who got the motion? Ken seconded. Who's the?
Franklin.
Franklin?
We'll have a vote on that.
Ken,
Aye.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Okay. Amelia, do you have some proposed language?
That you make a motion to grant a variance of 250 feet to meet the 1,320 foot setback or quarter of a mile setback to an existing registered feedlot. I'll just note too that there's a difference in distance there based upon what the feedlot advisory committee was told, because that is a measurement I actually took out on site rather than off their application.
I would like to suggest two conditions. One is that they not object to future expansions of that feedlot that's within the quarter mile. And secondly, that the old site be reclaimed within a year after the building of the new house.
Okay. I think the reclamation of the old site is pretty easy. I don't know how. I would maybe suggest that the board could ask the applicant about how he might react to that. I don't know how we would write a condition that would require either the current owner or a future owner to not object to an unknown thing.
I would like to have the board go on record is at least have our minutes reflect that.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest that it sounds like he's been in this area for a while. His family lives nearby. He may be there for a long time. You could certainly ask him, what his thoughts would be. Now, I just would be hard pressed to come up with language for you that would accomplish that.
Well, let's just ask his opinion.
So, yeah, I'm here. So what do you want me to do with the old site? You want me to tear that all up then, or what? Or what are your thoughts there?
Would it disturb the landscape for erosion purposes, or would the old site be an eyesore if you removed I'm assuming there's cement footings in there. I'm only assuming, I haven't looked at the site. Is that correct?
Well, my thoughts are, I know I couldn't build a house there, but I was gonna try to reuse the old site for like an ag building or something down the road is what my purpose of was just to have a shop or something down there at some point.
That makes sense.
Because I had them look at the old plumbing that was in there underneath there. I mean, that came out all right for, to where I could use the old for my plumbing, and I already had water ran down there, so I had that. Then I had Modern Reading Mix come out and test the concrete wall and stuff like that. Well, that tested fine to build like just an ag shed on it. So that's my goal in a couple of years if the wife lets me build a shop.
There's, let me ask this question. I think Aaron alluded to it. We as a board do not have the right, or do we have the right to make him tear that foundation out when, according to the zoning rules in the county, Aaron?
Well, you can put conditions on a variance request that are related to that request.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about future feedlot stuff than I am about the old foundation.
Well, that don't bother me over there. I'm not going anywhere. You know, I can't say anything 50, 60 years from now, you know. I probably won't be around, but
Yeah.
hopefully one of my kids is there. You know, I don't know. I mean, me right now, it doesn't bother me. I don't know how down the road what will happen, you know.
I guess the question is, if they were to significantly expand that feedlot and in so doing had increased odor and so on, would you object to that since you're the one who moved to within the setback distance?
No, I don't. I guess I don't know. I mean, that to me it doesn't bother me any because I've smelled that for I don't know how many years already, so it doesn't bother me anyway. I mean, you're gonna get the smell no matter what. I get smell from a farm that's 2 or 3 miles away if the wind's right. You know, that ain't that big either. So, I mean, it ain't my issue, I guess. But like I said, maybe 30, 40, 50 years from now, it might be different. You know, I don't know. But to me, it doesn't bother me any.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. I don't know how you would put that up, and you know, is it enforceable? I think it's like all of them. You know, these people have a background in ag areas, and as long as they understand that, there's no guarantee going forward. We would hope as long as they're good enough. The feedlot people are good enough to not restrict it in any way that it would be reasonable to accommodate them in the future. But I don't think there's any way we can put that in there, is there?
What was the original, when you read the original one before we added these restrictions to it, how was that read? Would you read
Motion
that
to
again?
grant a variance of 250 feet to meet the 1,320-foot setback to an existing registered feedlot.
Yeah, and I don't have any conditions drafted yet based on the conversation I'm hearing you all have.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't have any real reason to demand that he take that other, if he said he's going to leave it there and it's just going to be an eyesore and it's going to have critters running in and out of it, I'd say get rid of it, but he's going to put it to good use. I don't know why we would, I obviously had to get a permit for it, but I don't know why we would require him to knock it down.
There hasn't been a motion made for any of this. Am I right, Larry?
Right.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion then to have the old site either reclaimed or rebuilt upon within a year after the house is built, because it is kind of an eyesore. I drove out there and, if we leave these old sites, whether it's rots away or burns down or whatever, and then we just leave rubble here and there, in the long run, that is not good for the aesthetics of the area. And I think we're being quite lenient in what we're doing here. And in exchange, we should expect that the land be cleaned up to a usable condition or reused by a different building or whatever.
What would happen if he couldn't afford to put his shop there in a year?
That's a very good question, Franklin. Yeah, I would suggest that if the board is looking at building a timeline in, that you have a conversation right now with the applicant about what his thoughts on timeline are, because I think that if you put a condition like that on there and he rebuilds a house and then doesn't meet the condition you put on there, you put both the county and the applicant in a position where there's not a lot of good options.
Well,
I agree. Jared?
Yep.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna get something there. It's just with the COVID stuff and with all my kids' stuff, it's hard to get anything done. I mean, it's just
Yeah, and you're
You know,
building a new house, that takes money.
yeah, and I mean, well, I mean, a year is a little. I mean, I'm building. I don't know how long the house is going to take me, and how much, for sure, it's going to cost me.
Yeah.
To build a shed right away. Well, I'm like, well, I mean,
Okay, I'll amend this to 2 years after the house is completed.
so once the house is completed, 2 years after that, I gotta. If I start working on it, like say I start on it, you know, to where I'm showing that I'm doing something there, getting it a shed up. I mean, if you can give me something like that, would be awesome. You know, to where I can save up a little money, do something here, you know, kind of deal.
Well, and not only that, we could, I guess, what Brian is saying, he doesn't want it to just be left.
Well, it ain't
open
gonna be. It ain't
maybe
gonna be
we
left.
say a
If my
year,
wife
even
won't let
2
me.
years, with the option of being able to extend it if you
Right.
chose to.
Well, I know I'm gonna put.
Larry,
something there.
Larry, do you have a second to that motion?
I don't know. We haven't heard. I don't have a second to it. Well, what is it now?
Do
Hey,
you want us to restate that?
well, we had the motion, and then we went into the discussion.
Well,
So
Brian,
is this
You had a
motion?
motion with the restrictions.
yeah, a motion with the 2-year requirement to build. So I think you're going to ask for a second 3 times, I believe. And if there's not, then you can continue to discuss.
All right. Is there a second to that motion? Do I hear a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, the motion fails.
Then I'll
Hey,
make
Larry.
a motion to grant a variance of 250 feet to meet the 1,320-foot setback to an existing feedlot, registered feedlot. Is that motion would be written properly, Aaron?
I think that sounded perfect, Franklin.
And I will second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. We will do the finding or the,
Yep. Who had the second?
Kenneth Anderson.
And
Yeah, okay. Okay, roll call. Larry,
yes.
Franklin,
yes,
Brian,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Jared, I believe you have a permit in the queue. We'll be in touch with you next week and get that thing processed for you ASAP.
All right. Thank you very much.
I believe you still have to approve minutes.
Oh, yeah. Where are the minutes?
I have one item of old business I'd like to address as well. Now or after you approve the minutes?
Let's find the minutes here first.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented from the August 27th meeting.
I have a
I'll
motion.
second him.
Second, all right. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. We need to do a roll call on that, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, Ken,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes,
Brian.
Yes.
Okay, and then I apologize. Could you tell me who made the motion in a second?
I made the motion, Kenneth Anderson.
And motion. Who has the honor of the second on that?
I did, Franklin.
Franklin. Thank you. Okay, minutes are approved. But Larry, you had
Brian had an issue.
Yes, I don't know if the rest of the Board of Adjustments is aware of this or not, but I watched the video of the September 8th Commissioners meeting, and in that meeting, the Commissioners voted that they would just bypass the need for a variance on a building that was built on a slope that was too steep to be built on. And my concern here is that by doing that, they in essence issued a variance. Because if you don't need one, that's the same as issuing one. And the ordinance says that the Board of Adjustments has the sole ability to approve variances. And so the Board of Adjustments role was just usurped by the Commissioners. And I think that ought to disturb you.
It does disturb me. So what do you propose doing?
Well, we could complain about it, maybe make it public, I don't know. It could be appealed.
Well, I just my opinion, I think that if there's any fault to be found, it's not in our committee, and it is in, you know, they are the Commissioners. They can do what they choose to do. I don't know that we're the keeper of that.
I think we are. I mean, that is what the ordinance says, that that's our responsibility and role. And now, have we just become irrelevant? Is the Board of Adjustment really no longer relevant?
So then, Brian, are you suggesting that we as a Board of Adjustment have the authority to sue the county or the Commissioners, or are you just, how are you suggesting that we go about doing this?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but I would say that we could file an official complaint as a board, or we could talk to Sam Yant about it and see if this could be appealed in some way. I think what they did was actually quite extraordinary, and a couple of the people at that meeting also thought so and objected, but they just went ahead and did it anyway. And if they can do it once, now there's a precedent. So any kind of friend or special case or special interest can just work around the normal process.
I think, just a suggestion, but I think we better, if we're going to do something, I think we better talk to an attorney so we don't do something that we will regret. I think we should maybe table it. It's just my opinion now. The rest of the board members can say what they want to.
Maybe you should all start by just watching the video. It starts at around 45 or 50 minutes in that meeting. It's about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes the discussion, and see for yourselves what happened there. And I personally found it objectionable.
Well, I think we're subordinate to them. I don't know that.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
As individuals, they can replace us at their will, but this board is not subordinate to the Commissioners.
Yeah, I guess that's.
They would like you to believe that.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, if there's no more comments on that, and Brian, if you're suggesting that folks watch it, you could probably have a lot more meaningful conversation if everyone
Boy,
knew what they were talking, I mean, had viewed it, but is there more conversation on that? Otherwise, we've got another hearing still tonight.
yeah, man, we're about an hour late on it.
Yep.
Can we table that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I think it's important.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
We don't have to do a
Ben
thing.
Anderson,
All right.
Aye.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
All right, thank you all.